Welcome back to the Pundits. Glad to have you. Screven, pretend you're a headline editor and you're trying to come up with a headline for Super Tuesday. What would it be?
Romney inches forward, cannot seal the deal.
Okay. Sally?
Paging Jeb Bush.
You would be one who could do that. I hope he sees this show.
I'm sure that will make no difference.
Justin?
I would say Romney inches closer to Republican nomination.
Okay. Very good. Well, let's elaborate a little bit. Sally, let's elaborate on what you had to say. That was very interesting. Paging Jeb Bush.
Well, I think we're continuing to see frustration among the Republican electorate about just who our nominee should be. And I happen to think Governor Romney will win the nomination. It has not been an easy battle for him, but he still has the most resources available to, at the end of the day, get the delegates needed to be nominated. But certainly we have seen some challenges within the party and just what we're looking for in a nominee. And there's been a lot of talk about a potential brokered convention and whether Governor Bush would step up if called on to do that. Unfortunately, I don't think he will, but I think this is a drumbeat that we have heard for some time and will continue to hear, particularly as we head into more southern states in the next week.
I read in the New York Post, John Podhoretz was making a comment that Governor Romney is the not candidate. He's not Perry, he's not Bachmann, and maybe that he's the not Obama who can beat Obama. He's the only one. Is that, Justin, what his underlying theme is, that he's the only one that can do it?
Yeah, I don't think that's fair to Governor Romney. I mean, he has an economic plan. He's talked about foreign policy issues. He spoke at the American-Israel Political Action Committee recently on his policy towards Iran. So I think that's a little bit unfair to Governor Romney. I think that he certainly, there is a benefit for the Republican candidates to say that we're not President Obama. We know that 52% of registered voters in Florida don't think President Obama deserves to be reelected. So from that perspective, I think it works. But I can't remember him saying anything like that. But look, there is a competitive primary. Candidates need to differentiate themselves. So right now, his primary competitor is former Senator Rick Santorum. So that's why we're seeing negative ads by Governor Romney's allies against Senator Santorum, which is not unusual in a presidential primary.
True. Screven, as a Democrat, seated way over there on that side of the table, looking in, what are you feeling when you're watching the Republicans duke it out in these primaries and you're seeing attrition as different ones of them leave the stage and 4 are left now? Is it just a wonderful time to be a Democrat, or maybe some people are arguing really that the Republicans are getting sharper in their debating skills and they're going to be tougher when it comes to November, and they have to take on a very skilled debater in the president. What's your view?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you go through these primaries, you tend to get sharper in some of your skills. But I have to go back to the fact that the president, and we talked about him, he's not been invisible during this debate. And he is very skilled. He knows what's coming. We talked about the negative ads. He knows that, and his team know this is going to be a tough, rough campaign. So he's out there. He's inserting himself. But, you know, Steve, he's talking about the issues. He held a press conference on Super Tuesday, which got a lot of play, where he was talking about Iran. He was talking about the economy. He was talking about the housing crisis. And so he is out there talking about issues while these 4 duke it out. And I don't know that there's going to be a lot of attrition from here on out. It's very interesting that the GOP hadn't got a lot of play, but one of their worst mistakes, I believe, was the rewrite of their delegate rules. This point 4 years ago, 80% of the delegates had been picked. This point now, 13%. There is no way. Romney may actually sew this up at some point. It's probably May or June if he does. So they will continue to duke it out. Their negatives, the independents that we've talked about before on previous shows, their poll numbers are dropping among the independents, which are going to be key in this election. And I just don't see Speaker Gingrich or Santorum getting out of this election, and they're going to fight on while the president, to answer your question, can continue to have the bully pulpit of the presidency and look presidential.
Steve, I think it's important to remember 4 years ago, Senator John McCain had the Republican nomination locked up in March. Hillary Clinton didn't concede to Senator Barack Obama until June. So I think it's not necessary to assume that the long primary will ultimately hurt the ultimate nominee of the party. There are a lot of other factors that can come into that.
Poll numbers don't show that, though. I mean, that people want to compare it to the Barack Obama-Hillary Clinton race, and those were two different races. The battleground poll that polls all the battleground states has the president above 50%. For the first time in a while. While, again, when I alluded to earlier, in those battleground states, Romney's numbers are falling. The question is, can he recover from that?
Sally, when Ms. Clinton and Obama got back together again and moved forward, they really didn't have a lot of differences in terms of policy. They really didn't. They had a bitter struggle out of which President Obama emerged. That's not exactly true, is it, when it comes to Romney?
I think it is true. At the end of the day, the biggest issue in this election is that Barack Obama has not led on the economy. I mean, this is a man who came into office and said things are going to be better. We're going to significantly improve employment and job opportunity, and there will be economic growth. And that has not happened because Barack Obama is ultimately Barack Obama. And it doesn't matter if the sideshow of a Republican primary is going on over here. The fact is, at the end of the day, these Republicans agree on 99% of the issues, and they're in 100% agreement that Barack Obama should not be our president. And so I'm not concerned at all about the end of the primary process and then being able to come together on messaging. This is a president who has argued for the most massive social change we have seen in our lifetimes, a complete redistribution of wealth. No longer under Barack Obama are you going to be able to play by the rules and work hard and advance in your career. This is someone who truly wants to make government drive everything in our lives. And so I have no concern about where the Republican candidates will be at the end of the day when we have a nominee.
Except, you expect me to disagree on this, except the economy is getting better. We are creating jobs. GM is hiring, and this is a guy that hadn't come out a lot, but Romney in 2008 wrote an editorial to the New York Times saying, let the auto industry go broke. Let them go bankrupt. That's going to come back and haunt him. GM is hiring. The Dow's over 13,000. Elections are about feel. Many times people decide at the end, we've talked about before, is this a person I'd like to have a beer with? Well, I think this election is about how do I feel about our country? How do I feel about the economy? I think the social issues are less important than the jobs and the economy. And all the indicators are people are feeling better about the direction of the economy in this country.
I don't think that's something that President Obama can take credit for, though. I think that the unemployment rate is still much too high. I think the other thing that President Obama is going to have to answer for, in addition to all the things that Sally very eloquently said, is we are $5 trillion more in debt now than we were when President Barack Obama took office. And that's $5 trillion that our children and our grandchildren are going to have to find a way to pay to all the creditors that Barack Obama has borrowed money from all over the world. So that's another problem that President Obama is going to have to answer for.
Justin, why don't you ever say that what I say is eloquent?
Sally's eloquent.
Well, speaking of eloquence, something that I want to throw out, and you can speak to this if you want to, but this is really a question for Republicans. What is the message going forward for the Republicans in this presidential campaign? What's the core of it? What would you say to that? You spoke to it.
I think the core of it is government's too big, that Barack Obama's vision for America is an expanding role for government. He has not done anything to propose serious debt reform. Even his own commission that he appointed, he hasn't really seriously looked at any of their recommendations. So I think for the Republicans, they need to talk about what's going to be done to truly help the economy grow and not to put burdens on the economy as President Obama has done. And I think that's going to be a key message. And also smaller, limited government and less burden, less debt burden, and less of a yoke of debt on our children.
Sally, you want to comment?
Justin's absolutely right. I mean, there's nothing I can add to that except to your point on GM hiring. The fact is Americans want to be Ford. They don't want to be GM. They want to be a company that on their own has worked hard and played by the rules and succeeded even in difficult situations. And this is where there is a huge division between Barack Obama and not only Republicans, but the rest of the nation, the people who will vote in this election. We don't want more government in our lives. We want less. We don't want a larger debt for our children. We want less. We play by the rules. We live within a budget. Why can't the federal government? This is a president who has been such a poor leader. We haven't passed a budget during his presidency. In the state of Florida, we're required constitutionally to balance our budget every year. The federal government not only doesn't have a balanced budget, we don't have a budget at all under which we're operating. That is just shocking to people like me who balance a checkbook at a kitchen table every month and make sure they have money set aside for the things that their families need resources for. And that there is a huge philosophical divide between this president and the rest of the nation. That will be the talk in the fall.
Screven, I'm going to let you come back in the second half of the show, and I'll give you, probably the second half of the show to rebut that.